Whenever we are doubting the path that we're on, be it your career, your relationships, the place where you live, it seems so logical to ask the question, well, what is my right path? And to use some sort of method or just sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. But is this the right question to ask? And what might be a much better question? Welcome to the Bold Perspectives podcast. I'm your host, Archie Del Rey, and this episode is about questioning and doubting your own path. We have all been there, especially if you're like me. I'm 36 and I already had about 7 or 8 careers, if I counted correctly. So I have a broad field of interest, to say the least. And even quite recently, I've been doubting whether I'm doing the right thing because I was about to sell my main business and it didn't work out as I wanted it to. And I was already beginning to build the next one. So then I'm confronted with this question. Do I reinvest into the old business to make it more sellable, or do I basically forget about it and focus on the new one? There's pros and cons to both, so there is no rational way to decide. And especially for me, I have high standards. I'm not satisfied with a rational decision anyway. I want to include my heart and my gut and not just the mind, and have like a full body yes to whatever I'm doing. So naturally, I would at some point land at the question, okay, what is it then that I really want? In hope of being able to ask this question, figure it out, and then depending on the answer, derive the decision, like what does make sense to invest in the old business or in the new one. And I was struggling to answer that question, what do I really want? And at some point I noticed, now looking back, how genuine is the asking. Like when you ask somebody, what do you really want? Not even yourself, but just somebody else. Is it the way a grandfather would ask his grandson on a sunny Sunday afternoon in the park, what do you really want? Or is it more like if you have a quarreling couple having an argument on a typical Sunday afternoon in the kitchen, asking, what do you want? There's a different mood, right? The first one is an open question. It's a welcoming question. The second one is, it just feels more like a manipulation. It just feels more like there's something behind, there's some agenda behind that question. Even if you do not quite know what agenda, but you feel it. You feel that the game that is presented to you is rigged. So what happened to me while I was going through this sort of agony of that questioning, where do I want to invest my time? What happened is that I had a dream. Although I do not remember the details of the story, what happened in the dream, but I remember the feeling of being hit on the back of my head. And it's one of those memories where it's not a visual memory where you have images, but more like a somatic memory where you feel it in your body. And from that sensation, which for me was being mindlessly hit on the back of my head like children do to each other sometimes, unfortunately. And I was like, why does this come up? What's the meaning of this? What story do I attach to that sensation? Because, it happens. Children hit each other. Children fall on the ground. It probably happened to me several times. I don't even consciously remember who it was who might have hit me. It might even have been some of my like adult caretakers at that time, or like a parent or grandparent, or even a school teacher maybe, who knows. But it's not about the thing itself, it's about the meaning that we attach to it, right? Because this is how trauma is created. When you have an intense sensation, feelings attached to it that you cannot resolve in the moment, and then you attach a story to it. And that defines a lot of things that happen down the line in your adult life, even if you don't consciously remember. So I was like, why is this coming up? Like, what's the story? And the obvious meaning to me of being hit like this is demeaning. It's degrading. It's like when you want to humiliate somebody, when you want to show them that you are superior and that they are like worth nothing, then you hit them at the back of your head. This feeling of being humiliated, like what is humiliating? It is basically questioning the dignity of somebody. And if we define dignity as the feeling of being worthy of respect, that includes self-respect, right? So the opposite of that is basically a self-concept of shame. It's that meaning of I am bad, like something is wrong with me. Otherwise, they would not hit me if there was not something wrong with me. Like as a child in a powerless situation like this, you have to somehow deal with the intense pain of it in the moment. And in a healthy environment, there would be an adult there who would co-regulate and help you process the feelings. But because that doesn't happen, and it did not happen for me for sure, because I had no emotionally literate adults around me, so I had to find another way. And what naturally happens is that we tend to create some sort of self-concept, something that explains why this is happening, because that can calm down the nervous system at least a little bit in the moment. So when you're humiliated and you cannot regulate, then what happens is you create a self-concept of shame, something that says, something is bad about me. I am bad. So let's play the game a bit further. So what kind of consequences does this have? So the main three internal consequences, like emotional consequences of creating a self-concept of shame is, first, you will always assume that you shouldn't be seen because something is bad about you. Second is you will have a constant baseline of anxiety, which says, I cannot trust myself because if I trust myself, like I will mess it up because I am bad, something is bad about me. And the third one is fear. You will always fear failure. And you will subconsciously, like this, all of this happens subconsciously, right? You will think something like, I shouldn't even try. Because if I try, then again, I will mess it up and then they will find out. So we have shame, we have anxiety, and we have fear of failure. Then that has, in turn, some consequences on the external in your behavior. So the big three would be, number one, you will be deferring to others because you want to avoid being wrong, right? So you will kind of tend to over-rely on opinions of others. Then number two is you will be second-guessing everything. There will be this hypervigilance, that analysis paralysis thing going on, just to avoid, like trying to avoid making a bad move. And the third is you basically sabotage. Again, all of this is happening unconsciously. You will sabotage any kind of love and success. Why? Because any experience of love or success would create a cognitive dissonance, because there is this core belief of something is bad about me. And then if reality presents you something else, that could mean that you're actually good, that creates a cognitive dissonance. And it's much easier. It's like the path of least resistance to resolve a cognitive dissonance like this is not to question your internal constructs, but and feelings and everything, beliefs, but to actually question reality. It's much easier to just say, no, this is not happening, and to do these kind of weird behaviors that basically make it impossible for you to have love and success and experiences that would prove to you that you have love and success. So here I am, sitting in the agony of trying to decide whether I want to invest my time in the old business or in the new one. And I'm doing all of these things. I'm having all the internal consequences because I'm not trusting myself. I'm having that anxiety that I don't want to mess it up. I want to choose the right thing. I'm having the fear of failure, and I don't want to be seen as an idiot. So I'm having this shame around it. And I'm also experiencing all the behavioral, the external consequences. I'm trying to figure out the right answer by trying to figure out more information, which is deferring to others. I'm second guessing. I'm trying to avoid to make a bad move, and I'm basically sabotaging an experience of success because in the end I'm frozen and I'm not making a move. So nothing will happen and I will not have success with either of the businesses. So basically I'm completely stuck. And at this point it is obvious why asking the question, what do I really want, in this particular example is not empowering at all. It is basically re-traumatizing. So what's the solution? If you resonate with this, then here is a solution which consists of 3 steps and 3 practices that you can cultivate. So the 3 steps are: number 1, you have to see the self-concept and you have to bring it home. You have to take ownership of it. You can do that through journaling, through asking yourself these questions how am I perceiving this? How am I perceiving myself? How am I talking to myself? How am I thinking about myself? You can do guided meditations on self-concept. You can listen to music that resonates with self-doubt and dignity to explore your own feelings. You can just sit and feel and go through, how does this make you feel? What sensations do you have in your body? Whatever method you use, step 1 is about going towards the pain and not away from it in order to really take ownership of the whole issue and get down to that core belief, get down to that sentence that will be something like, something is wrong with me, I do not deserve this, something is bad about me. Then step 2 is to confront the shame, which means now that you have taken ownership of this, you can bring that into your relational life, into your friendships. If you allow yourself to be a mess around the friends that you trust, and then have that experience of them just accepting you like that and not running away from you and not judging you, then you can let that in. You can really feel how does that feel? Because that will be different than what you're used to. That will be a new experience if you allow it to be. Even if you think, yeah, I've been around my friends all the time, they know everything about me, but you've never been in their presence with the awareness of that self-concept and being attentive enough to actually let it in, to really feel, to focus on that feedback. How does that feel to be a mess and still have friends? To feel shame, anxiety, and fear of failure and still have people around you. So step 2 is about accepting that healing in the relational space. Then step 3 is to do actual process work. In psychological terms, that would be past regression work, or in more shamanic healing terms, that would be soul retrieval. That is a process to get access to your inner child and to get in contact with a part of you that is still stuck in sort of a time capsule in the past, in those situations when this self-concept of shame was created and the dignity was questioned. After doing these 3 steps, here are the 3 practices that you can incorporate in order to integrate that 3-step healing into your day-to-day life. The first one is the practice of self-compassion, which is to hold yourself, to take all the difficulties that come with having shame, just to take that seriously, just to not dismiss those, being like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. Come on, be an adult. But be like, no, this is bad. This is difficult. And just taking that seriously and holding yourself in that like you would hold a child that is struggling. The second practice is the practice of self-trust, which means start small, taking decisions with a bias for action as opposed to overthinking. So you're not overthinking it, you're just deciding for something. Let me just go for this meal and not that one at the restaurant. And upon deciding and acting on it, you reflect and again feel, how is that? Have you survived? Was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? It's okay to have bad decisions, but what do you learn from it? Just to create distance between the idea, okay, I had a bad decision and I'm a bad person. And just to observe that you can have good decisions, you can have bad decisions, and you can still be a good person nevertheless. And the last, third practice is the practice of kindness to yourself, which means that in all the situations, especially in those when you think that you haven't earned it, to still be kind to yourself, to treat yourself kindly. No self-punishment. And having your focus on self-love and self-care, just unconditionally, no matter how bad the day was, no matter how you might have taken bad decisions and have been naughty and not disciplined and not productive or whatever. Be kind to yourself. So in the end, whenever you have doubt, whenever you think you might not be on the right path, before you start asking the question, what path is the right path for me? Maybe ask the question, am I being kind to myself? Am I treating myself with dignity? Or am I being like a quarreling couple with myself and being mean to myself? And by doing that, basically mimicking those bullies that were treating you badly when you were a child. Because the goal of this exercise is to treat yourself with dignity before anybody else can treat you with dignity. And then expanding from that, only accept behavior from others who treat yourself with dignity. So here's to the vision of a world where everybody is holding their heads high and having an upright posture, not because somebody told them to, but because we all feel like it, because we all feel that we are worthy of respect. And we include ourselves in that. Self-respect is step 1. That was Bold Perspectives podcast with Archie Del Rey. Thank you very much for listening and take care.